I'm Chris Nessie, host of Behind the Mic, Voices of the EPN, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey, welcome back. Steve here, and today I'm talking with Marilyn Raichle. She is the author of the book, Don't Walk Away, A Care Partner's Journey, where she shares her experiences as a caregiver for her mother who lived with dementia. Powerful book, impactful stories and information. So much to learn today. Thanks for listening. Oh, by the way, before you go, it'd be so cool if you helped out the podcast, and I got 3 ways you can do that. 1 is tell a friend and share links. 2, go to my website and leave a review and subscribe. And 3, click on the link on my website homepage where it says Buy Me a Coffee. And, by doing this, you could donate $1 or $2 to help me address the costs associated with producing the podcast. That'd be so cool. Thanks so much. You are awesome.
Well, the paintings were the key to everything, because before Mom started to paint, I, like many people, was not seeing the person. I was only seeing the loss. I was not hearing the thought. I was only hearing the confusion.
It's the Education Podcast, your favorite show, with lots of groovy guests and they share what they know. So crank it up to 10 and let your neighbors know that here's another show with Dr. Steve Milletto. Teaching, Learning, Leading K12. Teaching, Learning, Leading K12. Teaching, Learning, Leading K12. With Dr. Steve Milletto.
Marilyn Raichle, author of Don't Walk Away, grew up in the shadow of Alzheimer's. Nearly everyone in her father's family and many in her mother's had developed the disease. But Raichle became transformed in her views towards those living with dementia, inspiring the launch of a book and several nonprofits that helps and celebrates those living with the memory-robbing disease. Raichle began her career in the theater, founding the Seattle International Children's Festival. She served for 11 years at North America's largest international festival for children, introducing children to world culture through the performing arts. She then became the founding executive director of American Voices for 9 years, building an informed, engaged, and good-humored community. In 2007, she received a Master of Public Administration from Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government. She received her BA from the University of Washington. Upon returning to Seattle, her career changed when she became the family caregiver for her parents, both of whom were developing dementia. In 2010, inspired by her mother's newfound artistic ability, she founded the Art of Alzheimer's, celebrating the creativity of those living with dementia and the power of the arts to enrich and empower their lives. In 2019, she became the executive director of Maud's Awards for Innovation in Alzheimer's Care, celebrating and rewarding innovative programs and practices of care that are enhancing the lives of people living with dementia and their care partners. Marilyn, thanks so much for being on the show, and say hi to everyone.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you very much.
Well, glad to have you here. And so, Marilyn, let's go ahead and start with you by looking at the dedication in the front of your book. It says this: "This book is dedicated to all care partners at the beginning of their journey, that they may have hope to start and reassurance when they doubt. And the many care partners who have already walked away, may this book serve as a nudge to reconsider." So why'd you write that as your dedication?
Well, it's why I wrote the book, and it describes me and my journey. Like so many people, I had no idea what to do when someone in my family was diagnosed with dementia. And the public narrative is so dark. It is one of despair. And so you don't really know what to do, and you don't know what to expect, and you don't know if you can do anything to change anything. So this is sort of my journey. It isn't just sort of my journey. This is my journey. It's sort of inviting people to take a walk with me and Mom and enjoy and learn from our journey. It's you notice I say care partner, and that was a big thing because I moved from being a caregiver, taking care of someone who is in need of care, but not my partner. And one day we became partners, and I realized that I played a role in this, and it changed everything. And so to everyone who has already walked away, please consider walking back. you'll find that it's a wonderful thing to do. My life with Mom and my journey was the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life.
Excellent. That's it's so powerful as it is, because part of our world when you're a caregiver, or you're thinking about it, or whatever's happening in your world is going to change your relationship, that you might leave the assisted living or the building or the memory care facility, and might be difficult to go back. And I don't know, I think your message is loud and clear, especially then with reading your book. And so thank you for that message.
Well, thank you.
Your book, Don't Walk Away, has beautiful paintings throughout. Could you share a little bit about these paintings, where they came from?
Well, the paintings were the key to everything, because before Mom started to paint, I, like many people, was not seeing the person. I was only seeing the loss. I was not hearing the thought. I was only hearing the confusion. And Mom and Dad were living in a continuing care facility. They were among the few people who have the money to live in a really good continuing care facility. And when Dad died at the age of 89, Mom was really, really bored. So I took her to this painting class by Elder Wise at the Horizon House where she lived. And she didn't expect anything. I didn't expect anything. And what happened was she painted this fabulous painting. And she hadn't painted since she was 6. And she thought painting was a stupid thing to do. And so I was so intrigued by the painting that I kept going back to see everything that she painted every week. And it didn't take me too long to realize that she was still living with wit and invention and humor. And it was so intriguing that at first I did treat it like my new job. Instead of thinking of Mom first, really, I would run and I would get the new painting and I would go back to work to amplify its impact. And then one day, after about 6 months, I noticed that her paintings were starting to my eyes, look like she was losing interest. Same pictures, same colors, same scratchy lines. And I thought, So I got there early one day before the painting class, and we did everything she loved to do. We played Scrabble, which we did every day until she died. We looked at the view. We took a walk. We sang. And then I took her to the painting class, and the paintings completely changed. They were warm animal images that emerged and humor that emerged. And I realized that, I see, I have a role to play in this. We're partners in this. And that changed everything. So from then on, my life with Mom was about how we could navigate her life with late stage dementia, but together, building a good life for both of us. And so the paintings were extraordinary in that I always thought that they were a way for her to express thoughts and emotions she wasn't able to express verbally anymore. And they were funny. Sometimes they were dark, but rarely. And they were mischievous. I mean, she painted this one painting of daffodils, and the blossoms all had these snake tongues emerging from them. They were fascinating. And at the same time, Mother claimed that she didn't paint. When I would compliment her on her painting, she would say, I didn't do that. I don't do this. And only once in 7 years did she ever acknowledge a painting of hers as hers. And that only lasted for 30 minutes. But it was really fascinating. So the art was the key to everything that happened from then on. It was just extraordinary. And her art is mesmerizing.
Very much so. I mean, when you look at the artwork and you see the images that are there, and I think it's funny. Like there's one image that you talked about. Every time you look at it, it looks like an apple cut in half.
Yeah,
because I see the apple too. So, but
it looked like an apple cut in half, but in fact, because I started to write down what she was painting, because you wouldn't know, and it was in fact a yellow fan. So every painting I started to write down what she was painting, and that started when she was painting red roses in a red vase. And what she painted was this green picture of person, but with one red nose. And that was it. And that's like, okay, I've got to start writing down what she's painting because I do not know this. And so she wasn't, how she was interpreting things, it was a key maybe to what she was thinking, but then even then it would just intrigue me so much. Because you couldn't tell. Like the cover of the book has this little image of this jaunty little creature. And in fact, that was Mother's painting of pink carnations. So it was just fascinating. And
Oh, I can only imagine so as we're, you're talking about your experiences and your journey as caregiver for your mother. Tell us about your mother. I mean, who was she and what was she like through your eyes before dementia?
oh, well, she was a Depression baby. She was born in 1919. She was industrious and she was funny and she was a natural leader. She was competitive. She was opinionated, which was a family virtue. All of those things were relatively intact till the very end. I've always felt that who she was essentially was still there. It was slightly packaged differently, but she was still competitive and funny and industrious and all those things. So I've always described her as distilled to her essence. And so she was, and she remained mom, and she was essential to everything in our family. She had 5 kids. She made sure that we were in Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and Campfire Girls, and took us to all sorts of family gatherings. And that was always true. But she was raised in a very funny Scottish Calvinist family where the word love was never spoken. And so it was a very interesting upbringing in that we all knew she loved us because that was her job, but it was never spoken. And we all wanted her to be proud of us. And she was, but it had rules. It had rules. And so it was, to say that I was emotionally unavailable growing up is an understatement. We love mom. We just never talked about it.
Gotcha. All right. So let's talk about something that you recall your mom saying, which kind of sort of probably really fits with what you experienced there as well. I grew up in the shadow of Alzheimer's. Nearly everyone in Dad's family and many in Mom's developed the disease. Mom warned us, keep your distance. Your father and I will be in a safe place. There's nothing more you can do, so walk away. We won't remember you, so live your life and don't sacrifice it for us. And you say, I believed her. So what message are you trying to share with your readers here?
Well, that's a tough one. This was something that I heard from the time I was young, that this wasn't just once. This was on repetition, walk away, walk away. And we all believed that the best way to deal with dementia was to ignore it, and that mom was fine. And so just go live your life and that's fine. Now, that doesn't necessarily work if you're a home caregiver, because you can't ignore it. You have to be there. And so it was different with mom. So when I had to, and I say had to become her family caregiver, it was with huge reluctance. I did not want to do it. And that regardless of what she was telling me to walk away, walking back was the best decision I ever made. That she was lovely and wonderful, but no, I didn't walk away finally. And I'm very, very glad I did. So for anybody listening, don't listen to mom on this particular thing. Don't listen to mom. Don't walk away.
Excellent advice. Excellent. Could you talk about the role of being a caregiver? I mean, what's something that the caregiver just has to understand?
Oh, so many things. The first thing I learned, the most important and first thing I learned, was that I let go of the person who used to be and embraced the woman who was with me in the moment. It is not about her remembering things. It is about her living with joy. Remember that she is living with dementia. She is not suffering from dementia. That was the first thing I learned. I put the word suffering out of my mind because she was living. She was to listen to what she is saying. And I'm going to say she here, so I apologize to all the men. Listen to what she was saying and ask questions. This is a person, not a victim. This is a person with an enduring personhood that she and he and we all share basic human needs that will never, ever leave us. That is the need for friendship and the need for laughter and the need to be of value and the need to love and to be loved. That these are things that make us people. These are people. These are valuable human beings that need and deserve our support to live and to thrive with happiness. And it is possible. Early on, I got a call from a friend of mine whose wife had just was developing dementia and had just received a diagnosis that she might have dementia. And he called me up and he said, I know you work in the field, so can you give me any advice? And I said, well, the first thing I want you to know is that there is every reason to believe that she can live with joy and happiness for the rest of her life. And he said, you're the only person who said that to me. And I said, well, it's true. He said, well, now what? And so my book is sort of like to sort of say to all of those people who are starting to live this new life, who are asking, now what? This is what I learned. And it's not about me. It's not how I would feel if I had dementia. It's about her or him, how they're living with happiness and how you can interact with them and what you can learn about yourself and them and about living a good life. Mom basically taught me how to live at this point. It was miraculous.
That's I think it's so powerful to understand those thoughts, about recognizing I guess not trying to keep hold of what was before and instead
Right.
what is now. And I think that just comes through strongly in your book. And it's
Those horrible questions that people ask of, do you remember or don't you remember? Well, they're only going to frustrate him or her and make you feel frustrated. And then he or she will pick up on your disappointment. It's a dead end. It's not helpful to anybody.
Powerful thoughts there. In your book, you talk a little bit about when you kind of came to this realization that you're going to need to be the caregiver.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that impact on you when you became the caregiver for your mother?
Well, I didn't want to because, of course, the walk away was deeply ingrained. And I had just gotten out of graduate school. It was during the recession, sorry. And there were no jobs. I could not find a job. So my older brothers and sisters decided, okay, we'll help you survive if you become the family care partner or caregiver at that point. And so, okay, I had a new job. So I very reluctantly became mom and dad's care partner. Horizon House was taking care of most of their care, but I was there every day doing what I could to make them happy. And that wasn't very good because I didn't know much and I didn't want to be there. And mother's words were always in the back of my mind, walk away, walk away. So finally, I started to sort of relax. After all, I loved both of them and listen to them. And it was interesting in that what mother wanted the best for dad and dad wanted the best for mother, and their needs became my needs. So what I was experiencing was not sorrow, but shared purpose. And so that was sort of the second stage. Okay, this is my role as a care partner or as a caregiver. And then after dad died, then everything changed. That's when Mom started to paint, and I started to get to know Mother. And years before that, excuse me, um, before she developed dementia, I lived in a house not far from where they lived. And one day she just showed up, and I was taking a nap, and she laid down next to me and she told me she loved me. Remember, this is, ooh. And so I just remember crying, and she whispered, I guess I should have said that more often. Well, we never talked about it after that, but our life together as care partners unlocked all that love that had been waiting so long to express itself. So my journey with her went through, reluctance to being an incredibly fulfilled care partner and learning so much about myself and how to live and Mom, and moving from sadness to joy.
One of the things you just shared was that your dad passes away in there, and you and your mother had to deal with the passing of your father. Can you explain a little bit about what happened, and kind of get to the thought about how did you help her work through it? I mean, how did that end up?
Well, again, she was the one who worked through it. Mom and Dad were living in the small apartment in assisted living, and when Dad died, my sister and my brother and I were there. And so we thought we need to wake Mother up to say goodbye. But then I thought, will she remember this every single day? Will she understand? But we realized that we had to wake her up. So we woke her up, and I have never seen such grief. Now, bear in mind, in our family, you were not supposed to acknowledge death, and you were not supposed to cry. No tears. No tears. That was a rule. And Mother just wept. I've never seen anything like it. And so finally, she went back to sleep, and I got there early the next morning, and she remembered, and we talked about Dad and what a wonderful life they had. And then the next morning I got there early, and we talked about Dad. She remembered everything. And the third morning I got there, and she was just quietly weeping. And she said, I just want to be with your father. And without thinking, I channeled my mother, and I said, well, Mom, you should have thought of that before you started taking such good care of yourself. And she laughed, and she said, well, that's life. And from then on, she put it in this little pocket. And she would say, oh, Bob, about 40 times a day. But the rest of us were sort of course, she's just forgetting, and she's fine. And she just rejoined life and went back to her industrious, happy, funny, sunny person. But she remembered him every single night. She was rearranging all the pictures of him because his pictures were all over their apartment. And so it led the way to our new life together, because that's what started the painting. With Mom, that journey went on and on and on for years. There was a painting she did probably when she was 96, and the model and the table were seashells on sand dollars on a dark blue cloth. And all she painted was the word Dad, Dad, over and over and over again. But then I wasn't sure. It could have been her father, because Grandpa's pictures were all over the apartment too. But it didn't matter, because it was love either way. And so Mom just went on with her life. She was light years ahead of all of us. She would just cope with things, but she was dealing with it. She was mourning. It was our fault for not recognizing that she was mourning. We just assumed, of course, she put it out of her mind, but it was always there. But it didn't impede her. She went on with her life in a glorious fashion.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing. That's a very, I can only imagine the types of experience that was as you were trying to help her deal with, and at the same time, as you talk about recognizing who, this world that she's in, and trying to be understanding of that too. And what an incredible, what you're sharing there is powerful. You know what? One of the things that I wanted to make sure that I transition to here is that, because you mentioned again about her painting. Could you talk about how valuable a tool painting became for you and for your mom?
Well, it was incredibly valuable for both of us. With mom, I was never quite sure because when I always thought that she was more interested in the painting for the companionship of the people around the table than she was in painting, because she would always say, it's a stupid thing to do. I don't do this. So when I would tell her that I was taking her to painting class, she'd go, I don't do this. And I go, and if I compliment her about one of her paintings, she said, oh, well, I must have gotten this from your father's side of the family. But when she was in the painting class, as soon as the instructor put the brush to the paper, and mother would, just as soon as mother did that, she would start to hum. And she would continue humming, totally absorbed, completely absorbed in her painting until she was done. And then we would make her sign it, and then she would leave. And sometimes she would take a walk around the halls and come back and see everyone painting and ask them if she could join them. And they would say yes. So she sat down and she painted again. And she must have found enormous satisfaction in it, but it's something we couldn't really talk about because she was just so adamant about the fact that she didn't paint. If it ever came up, she said, I don't do that. For me, it was a window into mom that I hadn't seen before. And it was the trigger for me understanding the value of the art in helping her express herself, and the value of the art for everyone around that table who were expressing themselves, these glorious, beautiful paintings. And it gave rise to my next career, which was the art of Alzheimer's. And that stemmed from the fact that anytime I would show mom's art and her companion's art to people, their reaction was always the same. I had no idea. And only then, when they were able to experience the art, were they willing to even entertain the idea of talking about dementia. Because it was always like, I don't want to talk about it. It's a horrible thing. I don't want to talk about it. But you see the art and you see how interesting it is. You say, well, that's fascinating. And then it sort of took away the fear and enabled people to think about it or to want to learn more. So for that reason, the art was tremendously important. And then when I realized that it was deteriorating without me being part of mom's life in an active way, then that took on a whole new meaning. So that from then on, it was always important to me that mom painted. It was fascinating to me to see her paintings. And I always saved what she was painting and what she painted because it was fascinating to see the transitions. So if she painted a zucchini, sometimes she would paint a dragon. My favorite painting, which I have over my sink, is her painting of an orange gourd. And she painted this jaunty little creature with a face that looked exactly like a blue meanie from Yellow Submarine. I don't know where that came from, but kitchen chores have never been so much fun. And it was just endlessly fascinating. Her very, very, very last painting, my sister Jeannie was in town, and Jeannie's an artist, and she was really good with mom, and mom wasn't interested at this point and wasn't willing to sit down until Jeannie started prompting her, and mom started to paint these circles. It was apples. That was the model. And she started to paint circles. And Jeannie said, oh, but interesting circles. I think I'm going to start to paint circles. And then mom started to paint more and more circles. And it's the only time she didn't want to stop painting. That was her last painting. And it was endlessly fascinating to me to see what she was doing, and endlessly fascinating to anyone who saw it. So I was mounting art exhibits. And once I did an art exhibit with 50 paintings by 41 artists aged 60 to 101. Wow. And again, the reaction was always the same. I had no idea.
Wow. That's so powerful, especially going back to something you said earlier about the focus on who she is now, who she was when you're talking with her when she's painting, as opposed to maybe trying to correct her or something. Yes, you did paint these or something like that, and or how is this a butterfly or whatever.
Yeah. No, that never would come up.
As something else. One of the things that you talk about in your book is that something that happens as you are being a caregiver is that if you're using an assisted living facility, that often visitors and residents of the facility become like a new family. Can you just kind of talk to that a little bit?
Well, it was interesting because I just assumed at the beginning that, of course, she looks forward to my visits. I'm her daughter. And then it occurred to me finally that far more important to her were all her companions in assisted living. And that she was they were the people that she had a life with. And especially two best friends, Phyllis, who lived next door, who never spoke, and Kathleen, who was very stern. And the three of them sort of came in the middle, met in the middle, and Mom as the leader. And so Mom had all these friends. And I just sort of relaxed and thought, all right, I'll just try to join Mom's new family. And fortunately for me, they were willing to accept me as their family. And so I ended up with like 6 adopted new mothers. So visiting Mom was not just a visit to Mom, it was visiting everybody. I actually started something where I started offering to give people shoulder massages. They wouldn't know what I meant, but then they would take their cue from the person next to them who was having this, wonderful time. And once Jane came up to me and she said, "Oh, you have such happy hands." And the best compliment I've ever received in my entire life came from Gloria, who came up to me and she said, "Do you tuck your wings in a handkerchief when you're not here?"
Nice.
I mean, these were just utterly delightful, wonderful people. Flora, who was Italian, and every time I saw her, I would give her a kiss, and she would say, "You are my joy." It was just delightful, and so that became my new family. And it was probably more so because at this time it wasn't that I needed to see Mom or had to see Mom. I did need to see Mom. She was an essential part of my life. And all of these people, and they were all delightful people. It was just a joy. In fact, when I would tell people that going to see Mom at assisted living was so relaxing, they would look at me like I was insane. And I said, "No, it is. Real time is so relaxing. The moment, if you just surrender to it and hop on for the ride, the moment is quite wonderful once you get the hang of it."
Incredible. You have created a very powerful book. When you read and you see the images and you talk about what's going on, the reader can't help but think about maybe what their family has experienced or what they're experiencing in the current state and such. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit to this. What can people with dementia teach us about how to live our lives?
Well, first I have to remember that I didn't answer your previous question completely, which is, how do you become a part of a family? You become a part of a family in assisted living by becoming friends with anybody. You ask how they are. You listen. You respond to what they're saying. It takes a little while, but that's part of getting to know someone. And the basis of that is you have respect for them as people. You're not getting to know these poor souls so you can help them. You're getting to know people that might be really delightful to meet. So that's the first thing. So now, please repeat your question to me again. I'm sorry.
All is good. So as I listen to you and as you're talking about these experiences as I read your book and I look at your mom's paintings and talk about even as you as a reluctant caregiver, the stories that you share, one of the things that comes to mind is this idea of you might also have something else to share here, which is what can people with dementia teach us about
Oh.
living our own lives?
Well, I'm probably going to start repeating myself. What they can teach us is to understand that it's not about us. It's important to think of the person you're speaking with, dealing with first. Ask them how they are before you tell them how you are. Listen, respond to what they're saying, and relax. Just relax. You're not trying to prove anything. Just relax. Let go, relax. Believe that you can understand someone and be involved with someone just for the enjoyment of it. I'm a person who used to read The Art of War as light reading. So this is a huge change for me. But for anyone who spends time with people in assisted living or in memory care, I always would say to people, you should really adopt some mothers in assisted living. It's so much fun. That they are going to be able to treat you to relax, to slow down, to listen, to ask questions. And then it turns out at the end of all of this with the book, that it turns out that everything that works so well to make people who are living with dementia happier works with everyone, everywhere.
Very nice. The observations are so, thank you for sharing. I can't tell you enough. Marilyn, I got to make sure that in my show notes, I'll have a place where I put information about finding the book and such. So where can our listeners find additional information, connect, get a copy of Don't Walk Away, A Care Partner's Journey, and learn more?
Sure. We actually have a website called don'twalkaway.net, which has, I just did a blog about caregiver tips, and it has history of mom and has some of her paintings. And it also gives you the link to how to buy the book, which is currently on Amazon. If you're a big bookstore and want to order tons of them, you can go to Ingram Spark, but you can buy the book. It's $19.95. If we ever have net profits from the book, some of them are going to go to the I'm Still Here Foundation Innovative Grants programs, and one is going to the Memory Hub in Seattle, which brings people together. It's how people buy it, especially if they have family members who are aging, if their mother or grandmother or grandfather might be developing dementia. It will give you ideas about how to cope and how to approach this. And it will give you hope. And that's the most important thing. It will give you hope. This is not, people think of it as so terrible and so awful and so horrible. Nobody wants it. But it's not a death sentence. The soul, the person continues. And so that's how you can buy it.
Awesome. I'll put that information in the show notes. Thank you so much for sharing. And I've got one last question for you, which is a question I like to ask my guests, because my audience is made up of all kinds of educators and instructors and so forth. Do you have a teacher in your past who made a difference in your life? And if so, who was it? And what would you say if given a chance to say thank you?
Bruno Perini. Bruno Perini was my high school debate teacher. He was patient. He was supportive. He seemed to understand my reluctance to put myself forward, except I was so competitive that debate was really important to me. He was, I believe, the first person to ever give me an A+ on a test, so I really liked him. Nice. But Bruno Perini, if he is still with us, I saw him once about 10, 20 years ago. So I don't know. But Bruno Perini, thank you, Bruno. And if your family's listening, thank you, Bruno Perini of Highline High School in Burien, Washington.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Marilyn, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts about being a caregiver and the lessons learned. Your book, Don't Walk Away, A Care Partner's Journey, is so powerful. All adult children of aging parents should read your book. Wishing you the best in all you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, you have been listening to Teaching Learning Leading K12, a podcast to help you help kids achieve their dreams. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is a member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is a member of the podcast network based in Canada called Voice Ed Radio. Voice Ed Radio, your voice is right here. The opinions expressed on Teaching Learning Leading K12 are those of the guests and host. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is intended to share ideas, advice, and suggestions. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is produced for educational purposes. Hey, thanks for listening. It would be awesome if you visited my website at stephenmiletto.com and connected with me, left a review, and listened to more episodes. And by the way, you could also share it with your friends, with your family, and your colleagues. Thanks so much. You're awesome.